In modern NASCAR history, few accidents have generated the same level of disbelief, silence, and uncomfortable reflection as the crash involving 20-year-old Kyle Larson at Daytona in 2013. It was the kind of wreck that didn't look real when it happened, the kind that left even long-time fans frozen, unsure if they had just witnessed a survivable accident or something far worse. What began as a routine season opening support race turned into one of the sport's most alarming wake-up calls. Not because a driver was injured, but because a single moment exposed vulnerabilities that no one could ignore. In early 2013, Kyle Larson wasn't yet the Cup Series champion he would become years later. He was simply a young star with enormous potential, a driver whose rise through sprint cars, midgets, and development circuits had made him one of the most talked about prospects in North American motorsports. Larson's reputation came from pure car control and an almost unnatural feel for dirt racing. He wasn't a household name yet, but inside the racing world he was seen as a generational talent, someone with reflexes and instincts far beyond his age. NASCAR had placed him in their Drive for Diversity program, and by 20 years old, he had earned his way into the NASCAR Nationwide, now Xfinity Series, with Turner Scott Motorsports. For him, Daytona in February 2013 was supposed to be another step in his learning curve. He wasn't really racing for a win, not realistically. He was racing to survive, gain experience in superspeedway drafting, and show he could handle the high-pressure world of NASCAR's top development series. No one thought that within hours, his name would be known not for his results, but for an accident that would be replayed for years. The Nationwide Series race on February the 23rd, 2013 looked like countless others at Daytona. A tight draft, last lap chaos, and the expected scramble to the finish line. Drivers were bunched together, bump drafting at nearly 200 miles per hour, trying to position themselves for a final run. Larson was in the mid-pack, not leading, not blocking, simply stuck in a dangerous zone where a single mistake ahead would offer no time to react. This is usually where the biggest wrecks form. As the field came off turn 4, Reagan Smith and Brad Keselowski battled for the win. Smith made a move to block. Keselowski held his line. Slight contact turned Smith sideways. At Daytona, that's all it takes. What followed was a chain reaction everyone in NASCAR fears. A spin, then a shove, then an entire pack of cars locked together with nowhere to escape. Larson never stood a chance. His number 32 Chevrolet was clipped from behind, shot up the track, and turned violently. In seconds, the car launched into the air. It spun nose first towards the catch fence, the barrier meant to protect the crowd from the horror. However, the front of Larson's car pierced through the fencing. The force of the impact ripped the entire engine, suspension, and front structure completely off the chassis. The engine, weighing hundreds of pounds, flew through the fence and landed in the grandstand area. Debris scattered into the crowd, injuring more than 24 spectators. Inside the shredded cockpit, Larson sat surrounded by nothing but roll bars and the remains of a seat that had done its job. The fact that he climbed out on his own was, in the purest sense of the word, unbelievable. What stunned everyone, fans, drivers, broadcasters, NASCAR officials, wasn't just the violence of the crash, but how close the sport had come to losing multiple lives, both in the car and beyond it. The moment the race ended, the celebration stopped. Victory lane interviews were delayed. Drivers who had crossed the line unsure of what had happened looked visibly shaken. Many said later that they didn't want to watch the replay, not because it was gruesome, but because it was too real. Larson was checked and released from the infield care centre. The concern shifted entirely to the stands. Emergency teams treated injured spectators for a range of injuries, some critical. The grandstands were evacuated in sections. NASCAR immediately began securing the crash site and collecting debris for study. For the first time in years, the safety discussion wasn't about the driver risk, it was about the fans. Within hours of the crash, NASCAR, Daytona International Speedway, and safety engineers began analysing the catch fence structure, the tethering system meant to keep debris from breaching the spectator area, the height and angle of the fencing, and car components that had separated during the wreck. The general conclusion found that the fence had done its job, but only in the most technical sense, not in the practical, moral, or future-proofed sense. The accident raised questions no one wanted to ask publicly, such as, could modern 3,400-pound cars be fully contained during a high-angle impact? Were fans seated too close? Were engines and suspension assemblies properly tethered? And should the catch fence technology be redesigned entirely? The result was a multi-year re-evaluation of debris fencing across NASCAR tracks, eventually leading to stronger cables, better tear-resistant mesh, reinforced trackside posts, and more advanced debris tethering systems on the car themselves. Larson rarely dramatises the event when he talks about it today. He has said that at the time, the crash felt almost abstract. One minute he was racing, the next he was staring at the sky inside a car missing its entire front half. But nearly every driver who watched the replay admitted the same thing. It was the first NASCAR crash in years that genuinely scared them. Larson himself said the wreck made him realise how fragile superspeedway racing can be, and how fine the line is between a dramatic highlight and a tragedy. The 2013 crash didn't kill Kyle Larson, but in many ways, it changed NASCAR almost as much as the crashes that did claim lives. It exposed the limits of old safety assumptions, and it forced the sport to confront risks to fans, the people that the catch fence was designed to protect. It is, without exaggeration, one of the most significant NASCAR disasters that many have never fully understood, and a reminder that sometimes it's accidents drivers survive that teach the sport the most. Dale Earnhardt was born on April 29, 1951 in Kannapolis, North Carolina, a town known for motorsports and music. His father, Ralph Earnhardt, was a factory worker by day and a relentless short-track racer by night, doing anything he could to scrape together enough time and money to chase trophies on dirt ovals across the South. Though Ralph eventually found success and respect on the local circuits, life was anything but easy. Dale grew up watching the struggle up close. Money was tight, and the family lived modestly despite Ralph's racing accomplishments. From an early age, Dale was drawn to the world of motorsports. He spent his childhood in the garage, learning tools, tuning engines, and absorbing everything about the craft. Racing was the only thing he ever wanted to do. Like his father, Dale dropped out of school in the 9th grade to pursue his dream, much to Ralph's concern. Though his father wanted more stability for his son, Dale's stubborn determination was undeniable. Getting a foothold in racing wasn't easy. With limited financial backing, Dale Earnhardt worked his way up through the ranks the hard way. He ran short tracks across the South, often piecing cars together with used parts and scraping by with whatever he could. He wasn't handed anything, he earned every opportunity he got. In 1975, he made his NASCAR Cup Series debut. 4 years later, he went full-time, immediately making an impact by winning his first race and earning Rookie of the Year honours. In 1980, he won his first championship, just his second full season in the sport. From there, his rise was unstoppable. Over the next 2 decades, Earnhardt became one of the most dominant drivers in NASCAR history. He won 7 championships, tying Richard Petty, and recorded 76 career Cup Series wins. Earnhardt was known for his aggressive but calculated driving style. He wasn't reckless, he was precise, strategic, and intimidating on the track. He raced hard, wasn't afraid to make contacts, and rarely backed down in a close fight. That made him a polarising figure among drivers, but a favourite among fans. His rivalry with Jeff Gordon in the 1990s brought a new level of attention to the sport and helped define NASCAR's golden era. By the mid-1990s, Earnhardt became more than just a driver, he was the face of the sport. With the support from major sponsors and guidance from his wife, Teresa, he became a key figure in NASCAR's transition from a regional pastime to a nationally televised, sponsor-driven powerhouse. Off the track, he mentored young drivers, including his son, Dale Earnhardt Jr., and ran his own team, Dale Earnhardt Incorporated. He had an eye for talent and played a major role in developing the next generation of racers. By the 2001 season, Earnhardt was 49 years old and still competitive. He wasn't winding down, he was still pushing for wins and still a threat on the track. When he lined up for the Daytona 500 that year, it was his 23rd start in the sport's biggest race. He had won it once, in 1998, but he came into the 2001 event as a team owner, a father, a contender, and a legend still hungry for more. However, in the years leading up to the 2001 season, as I mentioned in a video previously, NASCAR had endured a particularly tough period. The sport had seen the tragic deaths of 3 drivers, Adam Petty, Kenny Irwin Jr., and Tony Roper, each killed in crashes during the 2000 season. Despite the grief and the calls for increased measures, Dale Earnhardt remained as determined as ever to keep racing. Little did anyone know, the 2000 Daytona 500 would mark the end of an era. The Daytona 500 that year had all the makings of a memorable race. It was Dale Earnhardt's 23rd attempt at winning the prestigious event. His car was fast throughout the race, and as the final laps approached, he was in a competitive position running 3rd. It was shaping up to be another intense NASCAR finish. After a series of late cautions, the field was set for a green-white checkered finish, a 2-lap sprint to end the race. With less than 2 laps to go, Darrell Waltrip noted on the broadcast that Sterling Marlin had been aggressively trying to get past Dale Earnhardt. Heading into turn 3, Earnhardt held the middle lane. Marlin was low on the inside, with Rusty Wallace behind Earnhardt and Ken Schrader up high. In turn 4, Marlin's car made contact with the left rear of Earnhardt's car. This pushed it down the track. As this happened, he tried to steer back up, but slid into Schrader's path. Schrader hit him behind the passenger door, sending Earnhardt's car headfirst into the wall. He hit the wall at around 160 miles per hour. Both cars then slid into the infield grass. Despite the severity of the crash, at first glance, it wasn't immediately apparent how bad he was injured. The track's emergency crews arrived on the scene quickly, and emergency responders immediately went to work trying to extricate Earnhardt from the car. However, he remained motionless, and there were clear signs that he was unresponsive. It wasn't long before that NASCAR officials confirmed that Dale had sustained critical injuries. After taking him from the wreckage, Earnhardt was airlifted to Halifax Medical Center for further treatment. Tragically, he was pronounced dead on arrival, leaving the NASCAR world in absolute shock. In the aftermath of his tragic death, NASCAR launched a thorough investigation to understand the cause of the crash. It was determined that Earnhardt had suffered blunt force trauma to the head and a fatal basal skull fracture, an injury typically caused by the head being violently snapped forward and then backwards during a crash. The impact against the wall, combined with the forces of the collision, led to this fatal injury. At the time of the accident, he was not wearing a HANS device, a safety innovation designed to prevent head and neck injuries in the event of a crash. Despite them being available, he refused to wear it, citing discomfort and a belief that it would hinder his racing ability. He had been vocal about his reluctance to adopt the device. Even though it had been endorsed by other drivers, including his son, the HANS device, whilst available, was not mandatory in NASCAR at the time of the crash. However, following his death, it became clear that this was a crucial piece of safety equipment that could have saved his life. And in the wake of the tragedy, NASCAR responded by mandating the use of the HANS device for all drivers starting in the 3 of its top series. This decision marked a significant shift in NASCAR's approach to driver safety, ensuring that future generations of drivers would be better protected. However, many people think he would have died regardless, and there was some controversy surrounding his death. 5 days after Dale's crash, NASCAR announced his left lap belt had broken, possibly allowing his head to strike the steering wheel and causing a fatal skull fracture. The manufacturer of the seatbelt, Simpson's Performance Products, said that the belt broke because it was installed incorrectly for comfort, not because it was faulty. Dr. Barry Myers, an independent expert, found that Earnhardt had died because his head and neck weren't properly supported, not because of the broken belt, and other doctors agreed. A few months later, NASCAR reported that Earnhardt's death was caused by several things, including the crash impact and the belt coming apart. It was unclear if a HANS device would have saved him. After the crash, some fans wrongly blamed Sterling Marlin and sent him death threats. Dale Earnhardt Jr. defended him, saying it wasn't his fault. Marlin explained that they were all racing hard and he had nowhere else to go. Dale Earnhardt's death left a massive void in NASCAR, but his passing also spurred significant changes in the sport, particularly in terms of driver safety. The crash was a turning point that led to the development and implementation of improved car designs and the eventual installation of safer barriers at tracks. These innovations significantly improved the safety of drivers. Although Earnhardt had refused to wear the HANS device, his death helped push NASCAR to make it mandatory. His impact on the sport was massive, both when he was alive and in his death. May he rest in peace. By the spring of 2002, Talladega Superspeedway had fully embraced its reputation, a place where the draft ruled, where the fastest cars couldn't always escape the pack, and where a single wrong move could destroy half the field. Fans showed up for the danger, drivers tolerated it because there was no choice, and NASCAR, still reeling from the shock death of Dale Earnhardt the year before, was under immense pressure to manage safety without neutering the spectacle that Talladega promised. Heading into the 2002 Aaron's 499, Tony Stewart, Dale Earnhardt Jr., Jeff Gordon, Matt Kenseth, and Sterling Marlin were the names to watch, all of them aggressive pack racers in a field itching for track position. Restrictor plate racing kept the field squeezed into a 40-car knot at nearly 190 miles per hour, and the tension built lap by lap. The opening stages of the race were surprisingly manageable, with long green flag runs and lead changes almost every lap. Fans sensed the inevitable though. Talladega always delivered a massive wreck, it was just a matter of when. By lap 164, the field was packed 3 wide, 18 rows deep, a classic Talladega powder keg. Drivers described the runs as violent, with drafts slingshotting cars forward unexpectedly. Tony Stewart had been among the frontrunners all day, swapping the lead several times. Behind him, rookie Jimmy Johnson was learning the unpredictable nature of the pack, and Kyle Petty, Bobby Labonte, and Rusty Wallace hovered dangerously close in the accordion effect. Then, with 36 laps to go, the moment Talladega was waiting for arrived. Coming off turn 2, Jimmy Johnson made slight contact with Mike Wallace, who drifted up into Tony Stewart's number 20 Pontiac. What followed was chaos. 24 cars were swept into the collision. Stewart slammed into the wall as drivers piled in with nowhere to go. Jeff Burton, Bobby Labonte, Wade Burton, Ken Schrader, Kyle Petty, Ricky Rudd, and many more. The track was completely blocked, metal and debris strewn across the tri-oval. In the broadcast, NASCAR announcer Mike Joy simply said, "It's the big one," because there was no other word for it. Miraculously, Tony Stewart climbed out of the mangled wreckage with only minor injuries. The replays were immediately compared to the airborne crashes of Rusty Wallace in '93 and Bobby Allison in '87, violent reminders of Talladega's unpredictable danger. The race resumed with a severely depleted field. In the final laps, Dale Earnhardt Jr., still carrying the emotional weight of losing his father at Daytona the year before, made a bold outside move to take the lead and powered across the line for the win. Ryan Preece, a seasoned NASCAR Cup Series driver, had built a reputation for consistency and skill on the superspeedways, including the Daytona International Speedway. On February the 19th, 2023, during the Daytona 500, Preece became part of one of the most dramatic crashes in recent memory. His car, travelling at nearly 200 miles per hour in the tight-packed field, was involved in a multi-car wreck that sent his number 41 Chevrolet flipping nearly a dozen times before finally coming to a rest on its roof. Preece emerged from the wreck under his own power, a testament to both his experience and the modern safety measures implemented across NASCAR. The reinforced roll cage and mandatory head and neck restraint devices all played crucial roles in preventing serious injury. Track safety crews responded immediately, checking on Preece and clearing debris to ensure the race could continue safely. In the immediate aftermath, Preece shared his relief saying, "I'm just thankful the car did its job and kept me safe. The flips were scary, but I knew the safety equipment was there to protect me." Fellow drivers also weighed in, praising both Preece's composure and the car's safety features. William Byron said, "Seeing that crash live was terrifying. Hats off to Ryan and the safety team, that could have been much worse." On May the 24th, 1964, the motorsports world was forever changed when NASCAR legend Fireball Roberts suffered catastrophic burns in a fiery crash at Charlotte Motor Speedway. Known for his daring style and impressive record, Roberts' accident really showed the dangers of early NASCAR racing. Edwards Glenn Fireball Roberts Jr. was one of NASCAR's brightest stars in the 1950s and early 1960s. Born on May 20th, 1929, in Tullahoma, Tennessee, Roberts was nicknamed Fireball for his fastball pitching in baseball as a youth, though racing would become his true calling. He transitioned to stock car racing in the early 1950s, quickly earning a reputation for speed, courage, and consistency. Roberts won numerous races, including the prestigious Southern 500 and multiple victories on superspeedways. On that day in 1964, Roberts was competing in the World 600 at Charlotte Motor Speedway, one of the premier races on the calendar. During that event, Roberts' car collided with another vehicle, causing it to spin out of control and slam into the wall. The impact ruptured the fuel cell, igniting a fire that engulfed Roberts' car almost immediately. Trapped inside, Roberts was unable to escape on his own. Fellow drivers and track crews rushed to the burning vehicle, heroically pulling him out from the flames. However, Roberts had suffered severe third-degree burns all over a significant portion of his body. He was airlifted to a specialised burn unit, but despite extensive treatment, he succumbed to his injuries on July 2, 1964, just over a month after the accident. Fireball Roberts' death sent shockwaves through the NASCAR community. Fans, drivers, and officials alike recognised that the sport's safety measures were inadequate, especially concerning the fuel containment and fire protection. The tragedy accelerated the adoption of fire-resistant driver suits and gloves, flame-retardant helmets, and onboard fire suppression systems and improved fuel cell design. Roberts' legacy endures not just in his racing achievements, but in the safety measures his death inspired. He was inducted into the NASCAR Hall of Fame, and today, his name remains synonymous in NASCAR safety history. The 2020 Daytona 500 was poised to deliver another memorable chapter in NASCAR history, and it did, but not for the reasons most fans expected. On the final lap of the race, veteran driver Ryan Newman was leading the race and on the brink of a stunning victory when he was caught up in one of the most violent crashes in the event's long history. Newman had navigated the rain-delayed race expertly and found himself at the front of the pack heading into the last corner of the 500-mile marathon. As he fought for the lead in the final seconds, Ryan Blaney bumped Newman's car, causing it to veer towards the outside wall. The impact against the safer barrier sent Newman's Mustang tumbling. He was upside down and sliding across the finish line in sparks and flames, before finally coming to rest hundreds of yards from the point of impact. During the crash, Corey LaJoie's car struck Newman on the driver's side, causing his vehicle to roll again, intensifying the already catastrophic wreck. The severity of the collision was immediately apparent to onlookers, commentators, and safety crews. Newman's car was badly damaged, flipped over, and engulfed with fire and debris, prompting a tense and focused response from NASCAR's safety teams. It took nearly 15 minutes to safely right the car, extricate Newman, and transfer him to an ambulance for transport to Halifax Medical Center in Daytona Beach. For several minutes after the wreck, Newman was unresponsive as crews worked frantically to stabilize him inside the mangled cockpit. His neck remained in place, indicating to officials that he was not alert right away. NASCAR's trauma doctors and emergency personnel coordinated their efforts in what one broadcast commentator described as a life-saving operation. The immediate aftermath was tense and uncertain. Fans, media, and fellow drivers watched in silence as Denny Hamlin's victory celebrations were muted. Hamlin and his team later apologised once they became aware of Newman's condition. Later that night and in the days that followed, Newman's condition was updated. According to a statement read by racing president Steve Newmark, Newman had avoided internal organ damage and broken bones, but had sustained a head injury for which he was being treated. Doctors were pleased with his progress, and he was expected to make a return to the track once recovered. Newman was released from hospital about 42 hours after the crash, holding hands with his young daughters in a moment widely shared across social media and news outlets. In interviews afterwards, Newman described feeling lucky to be alive and acknowledged how close the wreck had come to a much worse outcome. Medical commentators later explained that Newman had likely sustained a contracute brain injury, a form of traumatic brain injury caused by the brain impacting the skull opposite the site of initial impact, a serious injury that nonetheless allowed him to recover and eventually return to racing. The severity of Newman's crash, violent, airborne, and nearly catastrophic, immediately reignited conversations about safety in NASCAR, particularly at superspeedways where high-speed pack racing increases the risk of life-threatening impacts. Veterans of the sport and analysts repeatedly noted that improvements implemented after tragedies like Dale Earnhardt's played a crucial role in enabling Newman to walk away from an accident that just 2 decades earlier probably would have been fatal. His crash remains as one of the most significant safety events of the last decade in NASCAR, but it is also a testament to how far race car safety has progressed. In the early days of NASCAR's Car of Tomorrow era, a period when NASCAR was testing new safety standards and vehicle designs, rookie driver Michael McDowell was involved in one of the most dramatic on-track incidents of the late 2000s. During qualifying for the 2008 Samsung 500 at the Texas Motor Speedway, Michael McDowell's car was destroyed in a terrifying high-speed crash, yet he walked away uninjured. The accident occurred on April 4, 2008, when McDowell was pushing for speed on his second qualifying lap in his Toyota Camry for Michael Waltrip Racing. As he entered Turn 1 at over 180 miles per hour, the car unexpectedly lost control, a result later attributed to a broken sway bar and an abrupt change in grip. The vehicle slammed nose first into the safer barrier at enormous force. The impact was so violent that it did not simply stop the car. Instead, the vehicle tipped onto its roof and barrel rolled around 8 times along the banking, sparks and flames trailing from the engine compartment as it tumbled. At one point, the car was sliding upside down before finally coming to a rest on its wheels near the bottom of the track. The crash left the Toyota almost completely wrecked, bodywork torn, panels missing and debris scattered, but despite the severity of the tumbling, McDowell climbed out of the car on his own and waved to the stunned crowd that he was okay. Immediately after the incident, he reported only a few little bumps and bruises, and said that he had not lost consciousness during the roll. Witnesses and fellow drivers were shaken. Dale Earnhardt Jr., who had just won the pole for the same event, later said how terrifying it looked and how fortunate McDowell was to walk away. Crew members and team owner Michael Waltrip praised NASCAR's safety technology, noting that the cockpit remained intact and protected McDowell throughout the violent sequence. Officials delayed qualifying for over an hour whilst crews repaired the damaged barrier. The wall itself had shifted inwards from the force of the hit, before resuming on-track activity. McDowell's original car was so badly damaged that he had to start the Sunday race in a backup car, but the most lasting image from the weekend remained the qualifying wreck and the fact that he walked away from it. In the years that followed, McDowell himself reflected on the crash as a reminder of the sport's risks and the importance of safety advancements. Analysts and engineers often cite this crash when discussing the effectiveness of the Car of Tomorrow era technologies: roof strength, roll cage integrity, safer barriers, and of course the HANS device as a real-world validation of the safety improvements introduced largely after the death of Dale Earnhardt in 2001. McDowell carried on racing, and for a long time, this was what he was known for, until he won the Daytona 500, which fans were thrilled to see. So the case of Russell Phillips has already been done on my channel a while ago, so if you have seen it, feel free to skip. However, I thought it was important to include due to what happened after I posted the video. Russell's widow Jennifer got into contact with me and told me more about Russell and his life. Jennifer truly is a wonderful woman, and I was so grateful that she got in contact with me. We talked about Russell, how she dealt with things, and decided to release a message for people to read. She wrote this message for me to put out, so I'm going to include that at the end of this segment. Russell Lee Phillips was born on March 6, 1969 in Mint Hill, North Carolina, a small town located near Charlotte. Growing up in the heart of stock car racing country, Phillips was immersed in the culture of motorsports from an early age. The community around Mint Hill and Charlotte was closely tied to NASCAR and grassroots racing, an environment that undoubtedly grew his passion for the sport. He graduated from Independence High School in Charlotte in 1987, and subsequently worked for his father's truck equipment company. Despite doing various things like working as a preacher and volunteering as a firefighter, racing was Russell's passion from a very young age. Russell was obsessed with cars and enjoyed going to races and working on his own. In addition to his enthusiasm for racing, He volunteered at a local racing school, sharing his knowledge and skills to help aspiring drivers hone their craft. Outside of his love for racing, his friends described him as a gentle giant, a man tall and intimidating, but extremely kind and would do anything for the ones he loved. Russell started his racing career in 1990. He raced out of pure passion, barely making any money on it but doing it because he genuinely enjoyed it. He even met his wife Jennifer at one of his early races. He began racing on short tracks in the Carolinas, competing in regional events where he built a reputation as a pretty good driver. In the same year, 1990, he moved to the Nascar Sportsman Division, a series designed to help emerging drivers develop their skills. Unlike many competitors backed by professional teams, Phillips managed his own racing operation, driving the number 57 Chevrolet. He secured sponsorships from local businesses, including Mulliswell Drilling and later Hendricks Office Machines, which allowed him to compete against more well-funded teams. Whilst his early results were modest and he received little media attention, Phillips gradually improved his craft. By 1993, he achieved a personal best finish of 8th place in the Sportsman Division event. This brings us to 1995, where Russell earned his first pole position at Charlotte Motor Speedway, recording a lap of 157 miles per hour, a highlight of his racing career. This meant that he started his next race of his career at the front, and that race was in the NASCAR Sportsman Division at Charlotte Motor Speedway on the 6th of October, 1995. The race was a preliminary event leading up to the NASCAR Cup Series weekend and was designed to provide less experienced drivers with the opportunity to compete on a larger stage. The Sportsman Division often attracted drivers with various levels of skill and experience. Charlotte Motor Speedway, located in Concord, North Carolina, is one of the most iconic and celebrated racetracks in motorsports. Often referred to as America's home for racing, it has been a centerpiece of NASCAR competition since the 1960s. The race began and it started well for Russell, as he retained his spot in first place for the first 2 laps before falling back through the field. By lap 17, he was running mid-pack in 10th place, in the middle of a group of tightly bunched cars. These races were often unpredictable, and this race proved no different. On lap 17, as drivers exited turn 4, contact between 2 cars in front of Phillips triggered a chaotic sequence of events. Attempting to avoid the incident, another car struck Phillips from the side, causing him to lose control. His car slid up the track at a high speed and hit the retaining wall roof first. This collision with the roof was devastating, so violent that the roof and roll bars of Phillips' car were completely sheared off. This failure of the car's protective structure left Phillips exposed, and he died instantly from the injuries sustained in the crash. Spectators and drivers alike were stunned by the extent of the damage. Veteran driver Curtis Markham, who was also in the race, described the scene as absolutely horrifying, noting that the debris and visible destruction of Phillips's car made the severity immediately apparent. One eyewitness described the crash as the worst-case scenario. Phillips's body was described as dismembered and decapitated due to his collision with the catch fence and caution light fixture. In the video footage captured during the aftermath of the tragic event, one of the first responders is seen sprinting towards Russell Phillips's wrecked car. However, upon reaching the vehicle and catching sight of the devastating scene inside, the rescuer quickly turns away, visibly shaken. The graphic and catastrophic nature of his injuries made it immediately evident that any effort to provide resuscitation would be futile. The track was scattered with debris, blood, and body parts. This was truly a horrific scene. The race was red flagged as emergency crews arrived at the scene. Despite their swift efforts, it was quickly determined that Phillips had succumbed to his injuries. The atmosphere at the track shifted from excitement to disbelief, with fans and participants struggling to process what they had just seen. Freelance photographer Tom Whitmore said, "It looked like someone had taken a can opener to the roof. It was like there was a cave where the roof was supposed to be, like someone had scooped it out. That's as gruesome a wreck I can ever recall." They found Russell's helmet at the entrance of the pit road. Rescue workers quickly covered Phillips's body with a sheet and used a large yellow tarp to shield the scene from the crowd. They then gathered white linen sheets to mark areas along the track and in front of the empty 4th turn grandstand where human remains had been found. In what I can only describe as an insane decision, they actually restarted the race 40 minutes later. After the race had finished, An investigation was then launched. The investigation into Russell Phillips' fatal crash during the Winston 100 on October 6, 1995 was led by Nascar and supported by track officials and independent experts. The inquiry sought to understand the circumstances leading to the tragic accident, with a particular focus on the catastrophic failure of the safety structure in Phillips' car. Initial findings indicated that his Chevrolet had struck the retaining wall roof first after losing control in the collision. The impact's angle and force were extreme, resulting in the complete shearing away of the roof and the roll cage. This left Russell unprotected, proving fatal. NASCAR officials confirmed that the roll cage design in the Sportsman Division cars did not meet the same standards as those in higher tier series like the Winston Cup. According to the Charlotte Observer, NASCAR pledged to conduct a thorough review of both the crash and the Sportsman Division as a whole. The investigation emphasized the inadequacies of the division's safety regulations, which allowed teams to modify older cars, sometimes resulting in reduced structural integrity. A source from the Star-Gazette noted that officials examined whether Phillips's roll bar had been improperly welded or if modifications weakened the car's protective framework. Track officials also collaborated with safety experts to analyze the crash dynamics. The Edmonton Journal reported that the forensic reviews revealed that the crash's force was amplified by the car's high-speed trajectory and the design of the wall on turn 4. Investigators concluded that the failure of the roll cage and the roof bar system was the primary cause of Phillips's death. This raised serious concerns about the Sportsman's Division. NASCAR responded by announcing the discontinuation of the Sportsman races at Charlotte Motor Speedway starting in 1996. Ultimately, the investigation spurred changes across NASCAR. The adoption of stricter roll cage standards, including mandatory roof support bars, became part of the sport's evolving safety measures. The crash was described as one of the most gruesome in NASCAR history. Following his tragic death, the motorsport community and his loved ones were profoundly affected. He was only 26 years old when he lost his life, and he is survived by his widow Jennifer. He was laid to rest at the Sunset Memory Gardens in Mint Hill, North Carolina. His burial took place following a funeral service attended by family, friends, and many members of the local community. And here is the message that she wanted to put out. October the 6th, 2025 will be 30 years since Russell's accident. Much discussion has been had about the accident itself and his injuries, but what's not ever talked about is the man he was. He was a husband, son, brother, uncle, and friend. A fabricator by trade for his father's trucking business, he volunteered as a youth pastor at his church and was a volunteer firefighter. He taught at the fast track driving school as well as working on pits for various race teams in the 80s and 90s. He was wickedly funny, loved hard, and was quick to do the right thing. His ever-present sidekick was his wiener dog Jake. All of his nieces and nephews who were children when he died are now all full grown and have families of their own, and he would have loved them dearly. Please remember, this was actually a person who was much loved and missed. His accident was just that, an accident. No one was at fault per NASCAR officials. There was nothing wrong with the build of the car. It was a devastating accident. And this is the message I would like you to take away from this section of the video. Me and Jennifer are in contact every now and then, and I'm so thankful to say that she is doing well today. Hey everyone, I'm not sure when this video will be out. It'll either be out on Christmas Day or Christmas Eve. So I hope everyone has an amazing Christmas. I want to thank everyone for the support this year. And as always, this is not an AI channel. I do everything myself. If you like my work, subscribe. And if you want to go that extra step, maybe consider becoming a member. Let me know what you thought about these cases in the comments below. And as always, thank you for watching.